Hello, Wake Up New Zealand. Carol Saker speaking. On the 11th of July 2019, Ardern decided that she was going to ditch GDP, gross domestic product, and focus on replacing that with metric happiness well-being index. So the budget is built on this happiness well-being index. The happiness, the well-being of the whole population, a shift that lots of governments had theorised about but had never done. But had they ever done that? Yes, they had. So I'll go further into that later on. So the GDP has been a very useful tool for New Zealand because you can hold the government to account with GDP and the documenting of that. Metrics is all about numbers, and you can change the numbers. It's all in the numbers. It's a numbers game. So under Ardern's governments, it was agreed upon within the political toilet bowl of Wellington that they would go down this path of happiness and well-being index and replace it from the GDP. So it was seen throughout the world that Ardern was to be embraced and praised, and being the first one to adopt this happiness and well-being index. But that was outside New Zealand borders. Inside our borders, we can actually, many of us can see what road this is going down as we see the failing of many essential services in New Zealand, our health system, education system, housing, etc. They are the big ones, the basic living. You have to have your health, a roof over your head, food to eat, a whole health, wealth and well-being. That's spiritual, emotional, physical. It's not just a matter of taking a jab. That's not your whole health and well-being. That is very biased and narrative. So the London School of Economics called this New Zealand as a game-changing shift, a game-changing event, what New Zealand government was doing when it came to this happiness and well-being index. And they were seen to explicitly adopt it. And Ardern and political cohort started spending in the budget of happiness and well-being indicators. That was transitioning. That meant transitioning to low emissions, carbon emissions, and about the digital age, where she had actually volunteered all New Zealanders to be guinea pigs of the digital age for the WEF. And also it was about Indigenous inequality, and that is documented in policy making. So New Zealand government in their budget under metric happiness Wellbeing Index would address inequalities faced by Indigenous Maori and Pacifica and low emissions that would theorise to be effective with the use of your taxpayer money to make government decisions. And the government decided on climate alarmism and social inequality. So we're talking about identity politics here. Over innovation and growth of the economy. It does not grow the economy. So what they're doing, putting these indexes in place, happiness indexes, where economy, growth, innovation takes last place or takes no place at all. It's more like communist degrowth. So how do you measure happiness? Because happiness is different for everyone and it waxes and wanes. It depends on your past experiences, your characteristics, your physical health, your emotional health, what's happening in your family, What are your needs and wants that actually make you happy? There are so many variables, not one measurable against another. They're in multi-layers. You just cannot measure a population's happiness. So everyone is unique in their own experiences, their lives. It's called individualism. And, you know, this socialist communist regime trying to get rid of individualism to make us all the same. Remember, the government is there to serve us. We are not there to serve their wants for us to be all the same. So you cannot measure happiness. So it also depends on our DNA, our characteristics, our past experiences, and what we want from this future world and what we have right now. And what does our individual future world look like? So happiness in a population can't be measured. It definitely cannot. So the happiness index did not firstly become New Zealand's own. It was first introduced in 2008 in the little kingdom in Himalaya called Bhutan. So this is well known for its happiness index, but you won't have the mainstream media talking about the dark side of Bhutan that is full of the population of Buddhists, and they have a Buddhist psyche around contentment in the spiritual well-being, getting in touch with the natural surroundings, nature, etc. They are trained in a certain mindset. Prince William actually visited there because they are known for that. But the people of Bhutan, the Buddhists, with their inner spiritual contentment and peace, they live non-materialistic lives, very simple, different to the way that other nations live. But Bhutan, as I say, has a very dark secret that won't be divulged to most of the world. So this inclusive metric happiness index, I am relating to the historic happiness index of Bhutan and their history. So what we're talking about is the people of Nepal were invited to Bhutan many centuries ago, I believe it was 1600, to actually build stupa, accommodations, places for people to live. And they had grown in numbers and they moved to the south of the Himalayas, and they did not actually conform with the dress and traditions, the dress, the religions, etc., of the Bhutanese, the Buddhist way of life. They had a different way of life. So Bhutan, the authorities in Bhutan decided they were going to deport 100,000 of these Nepalese Bhutanians, because the Bhutanese had been in that country for centuries when they decided to do this, out of their country and back to Nepal. Well, there was like imprisonments, there was torture, there was killing of these people that were of Nepalese Bhutanese. This was their country they had lived in for generations, all their lives, and they had a very comfortable way of living, and that was their homeland, and they were deported from their homeland. So many of them, as I say, were executed, they were tortured, they were imprisoned, and those that were deported to Nepal were put in refugee camps that were like prison camps. Eventually, I believe the Chinese mayor took over Nepal. So they were in a situation where they had no homeland. They were imprisoned in a country that was not their own anymore. And this is what happened. And still, there are some imprisoned in Nepal. So this is the very dark secret of the Happiness Index 2008 of the Bhutanese that the world praises, that the UN praises, that the socialists praises, that the leftists praise. The Happiness Index is full of sorrowfulness. So people, please wake up to this, because let's look at it. The Happiness Index, the budget of New Zealand, the Happiness Wellbeing Index. The Guardian, 10th of April 2021, focusing on Ardern's Happiness and Wellbeing Index, reported faltering and failing affordable housing. Human Rights Commission of the UN came over to New Zealand and said that there were human rights violations when it came to housing in New Zealand. People were not given adequate housing. There was a housing crisis. So the reporting of faltering and failing, the unaffordable housing crisis, the failure of Kiwi Belt, the failing state of health system, the violation of private property rights now, the government budget still embracing the happiness and well-being indicators. They are still doing it. New Zealand, the worst youth suicide rate in developed countries. 21st of the 7th, 2021, 24,000 people on the public housing list. 2020-22, 31st of May, 27,234 people on the public housing list. New Zealand Herald reported 30th of the 1st, 2023, 37,709 people waiting 4 months or longer on hospital waiting lists to see a specialist for the first time appointment. Middlemore Hospital. In ED, people waiting for 6 hours or more to see a doctor. Mental health system is broken, reported Stuff New Zealand on the 30th of March 2023. Children in school, a pilot scheme on their literacy. More than half of the children fail that. Children are left rudderless, disengaged. The school curriculum, the sexualizing, politicizing of children, dumbing education down. Myths over real science, teaching merry myths over real science. Crippling our education system, disabling it, causing division by teaching critical race theory. Division, disruption, where children feel like they shouldn't be in that classroom. They're feeling disengaged. They're being held up to blame for past so-called abusers. Being made to feel guilty. The dumbing down of education, the robbing of our children's magical moments of childhood. Not telling them the truth, telling them enough lies until they actually believe it is the truth. And that's happening in the propaganda machine too. The government, non-government, they're all doing it. Those that cohort with the New Zealand government with socialism, Marxism, it's just full of cultural Marxism. So every subject in the school is embedded in sexuality, sexual desires of children. And then we have the third parties in the school system. Rainbow youth, family planning. Come on, people. What is happening here? It's insane. It's robbing our children of their childhood years. So the government measuring the population happiness is not an accurate, it's very inaccurate. It's a cover-up. It's a corrupt cover-up. It's a sorrowfulness index. It's the plundering of New Zealand, and it's been done deliberately so. The World Happiness Index was developed by the UN in 2011 when UN member states were invited to measure public happiness in their policy making. It came back right to then, and they then referred also to the happiness of the Bhutanese. So this has led to mass corruption, red tapeism, and the most needy are scavenging for breadcrumbs, while the lions, the elite, the corporate elite, and those most wealthy and powerful are given the very best of everything. Wealth is diverted to one place. It's called the distribution of wealth. The power to one particular reset, the UN Agenda 2030, that's steeped in all this. The government, authoritarian governments worldwide, we have one in New Zealand that promotes in its budget the happiness and well-being of the population of New Zealand, which is hugely corrupt, and it's still happening. Wake up, New Zealand.